Father Rubisola. Hope you enjoyed our last class on electronics because it was really a very wonderful class. I remember that I introduced most of the major electronics to you, like diode, like transistor, like capacitor, and the likes. So we want to start picking each of these electronics one after the other, and today we are going to pick capacitor as the main electronics we are going to treat for today. Looking on the board, you see the first diagram, which indicates the symbol for capacitor on the board. Most of the time, some people used to convince you with this. This is a symbol for cell. Okay, let me put it there. This is for capacitor, and this is the symbol for cell. So let's go to the table to show you what capacitor really looks like. Fine. We have various capacitor of different sizes, of different shapes, on board, on desktop boards, on power pack, and the likes. But the one you can see on my table is a filter capacitor. I remembered in the last slide I showed you like two major types of capacitor. I showed you the one that is a non-polar and the one that is polar. But the one directly in front here is a polar capacitor. When you're talking about a polar, it means that it has both positive and negative leg. A non-polar capacitor means that the two legs are the same, so you can decide to put it anywhere on the board. But for a polar capacitor, you must be very careful in placing it on the board so that you not place the wrong leg to the wrong place. Now, to the main capacitor here, the bigger one is what we call the filter capacitor. I'm going to show you two here. Looking at the one here, this is a bigger capacitor. This is a filter capacitor. Then coming to the board here, this is a board of a desktop power pack. You can see the two big capacitors that are here. These are what we call filter capacitor. So most of the time, immediately you plug your power pack to an external socket, this particular capacitor, which is the filter capacitor, absorbs the AC, especially when the AC is more than the required DC voltage that is needed on the board. Like here, the voltage in my socket is 220, 230, and this board only needed something around 18 to 12 voltage. So it means that this filter capacitor will initially absorb this higher voltage and pass it consistently to the board. So back to this capacitor. Now, a capacitor, the main function of a capacitor is that it absorbs charges and discharges consistently. And that's why someone could just be surprised that, but there's no light in this board, and I observe a shock. The reason is because the capacitor has absorbed voltage when there was light. So even when there's no light, it will keep on still releasing the voltage that has been initially absorbed. So that's why it is not always advised to touch board even when there is no light. So let me quickly show you some other shapes of capacitor, because you can't expect this kind of capacitor to be on the laptop motherboard. It's going to be too big. So looking at my board here, you see a very tiny capacitor that is being placed on this laptop motherboard. Can you see it? At least I can see three main capacitors that are here, so that by the time the power pack, or let me say the laptop charger, by the time it is being plugged, fine, it's the first electronics that is going to receive the voltage before discharging it to the other electronics. Now let's start with this rectangle shaped capacitor, and that's why when you are dealing with capacitor, you can come back to the board. When you are dealing with capacitor, there are different things that it does. There are some cases, like the filter capacitor that I initially showed you, it actually works as AC. It's going to absorb voltage from AC. But there are some other capacitor, like the square capacitor that I just showed you on the board. It's going to absorb what? DC voltage. Now let's experiment this with the laptop motherboard. Let's try and experiment this with the laptop motherboard on the table. Looking at this laptop motherboard is a very working board. So I've inserted the laptop charger into it. Okay. I've inserted the laptop motherboard into it so that we'll be very sure that there's a voltage in this charger. Let's try and test it with our ammeter before we proceed inserting it to the laptop motherboard. Fine, as I earlier told you that when you are reading any voltage that is coming out of a board, I told you that you switch your multimeter knob to the what? To the DC. So I can decide to put it in 20 DC. So then I will take my probe. The positive probe will always go to the middle. As you can see, this particular power pack or this particular laptop charger is very tiny. The holes within it is very tiny. So we need a very small wire in which can easily enter into the hole so that we can tap the positive side of the voltage, then reads. Now as you can see me putting the what? My positive probe to the what?